This conference will now be recorded.
Is our mic working?
She's on mute.
I just now can hear you.
Okay.
She looks better.
Want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Kara?
I can hear you. It's a little garbled, but I can hear you.
Can you please introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm Carol Gray, LMT board member, Portland.
I'm Bob Ruark, the Executive Director for the board.
Jeff Van Lennon, Compliance and Licensure Manager for the board.
Mitch Breedlove, Compliance Specialist for the board.
Angie Hunt, Board Legal Counsel.
Kaito Gasineta, Policy Analyst for the board.
Okay, and members of the public?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Ashford and LMT.
Number?
We have a few more, Kaite?
Yep, we have Laura.
This is Laura Pereira, Director of Government Relations at ABMP.
And Patty Glenn, Director of Education and Professional Mobility at the Federation of State Massage Therapy Boards.
We have a caller.
Okay, and Jennifer, can I get you to turn off your camera?
Yes.
Thank you. And caller on the line, could you please introduce yourself? They still there, Kaite?
Yes.
Okay, to the public member on the phone line, could you please introduce yourself? Okay.
And did Julie introduce? Is it Julie as well?
I'm Julia Nofrio, a massage therapist in Seattle.
Julie, please, can you put your last name on there as well?
But my what?
Last name?
Onofrio? Oh, I don't know how to add it to this.
Hold on.
Okay, is that everyone?
Yeah, other than caller number 2.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to approving today's agenda. Are there any changes or corrections that need to be made at this time? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved. Is there any discussion regarding the minutes from the September 27th and 28th, 2024 board meeting? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Okay, we will go ahead and move on to board business. I'll turn it over to Director Ruhr.
Thank you. I'm just going to go over the financial report, the budget financial report first. We're about 16 months into our 23-25 biennium, and our budget is approximately 60% funded. If you look at the second sheet, the profit loss budget versus actual, that far right column at the very bottom, which shows total income, that's the percent of income that we have as of this time of the biennium, actually as of the end of September. And you see it's almost 60% funded. Where we should be about 16 months is about 66% funded, so we're within 6% of our funding goal for the biennium. And if you look at the very bottom on the right-hand column, we've spent about 56% of our budget, so we're a little underspent. We've underspent our budget by about 10% where it should be, which is a good thing. So our income as of October 29th, 2024 is $1,599,882. And expenditures are approximately $1,476,660. Of note, these expenditures do not include our payroll payments from July, August, and September. Those have not been invoiced by the state yet. And so when you add those into our expenditures, we'll probably be more along the lines of the 66% expenditures. So we'll be about where we should be for this biennium as of this time. Yeah, I went over the second part of it. The middle, let me show you this. This is the budget rebalance. So if you look at the left column of this profit loss statement, you'll see that the July 2023 to June 2025, since it's not June 2025, this goes until September 29th. And it shows how much money we've earned and how much we've spent line item by line item. The middle column shows where the budget is for the entire biennium. And then the far right column shows what percentage of the budget we've actually spent or earned for each line item. Most of those should be around 60 to 70%, which they are. There's a few that are a little bit over in both the income and expenditures, but that's because those are a one-time fixed expenditure. So the entire amount was due at one point. So if they show 100%, that means it's been paid, and there'll be no other expenditures for the rest of the biennium. Any questions about the budget? None? Okay. I'm going to talk about staffing here. Actually, we'll talk about board member recruitment. So we're still working on filling our remaining board member position. It's that health professional regulatory or health profession public member, it's called. And we have a potential candidate that we're trying to assist with an application for that position. And but as of now, it's unfilled. That individual has not applied yet, but we're trying to reach out to work with that individual to get that application in. And as soon as we can get that application in, the next time we have executive appointments, we can move that individual forward for the governor to determine whether they want to bring that individual on board or not. But it's the only position we have available as of this time. Any questions? Okay, staffing. Compliance and licensing manager Jeff Van Landen will be retiring from the state of Oregon on January 1st, 2025, after spending almost his entire career in public service. He's been an integral part of the state and national efforts to fight human trafficking and his dedication to protecting the public and the integrity of the massage profession is exemplary. I really appreciate Jeff and everything he's given to this board and to the profession. With the board's permission, I would like to offer Jeff the ability to stay on after retirement as we transition the compliance and licensing departments into new leadership. The hiring back of a retired employee is allowed under state of Oregon policies and procedures. And the purpose of keeping Mr. Van Lannen through this transition is that it'll allow us time to recruit and hire, and will give Jeff the opportunity to finish and transition the projects he has championed in the areas of human trafficking, landlord engagement, and many other areas. This would be no additional cost to the board, and it would allow us time to properly recruit and transition this position. I would like the board to authorize me to hire Mr. Van Lannen back after he retires into his current position, subject to DAS policies.
Do we need a motion? Or how do we do this?
Was there any discussion?
That if you bring me back, I'll save you 6%.
There will be a savings because we will not be
That extra part of PERS
anymore.
Yeah.
So it'll actually be a money saving.
So we would need a motion to hire Mr. Van Lannen back while we transition the position.
Correct.
I propose a motion to hire Mr. Van Lannen back after he retires.
I'll second
My
that.
second.
Go ahead and give it to Ray. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jeff.
Congratulations, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you.
That's what I have. That's my director's report.
You're screwed.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Any other questions for Bob at this time? Okay, then let's go ahead and move on to the compliance and licensure report.
Thanks, Bob.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. Licensure continues to move forward at a regular pace. Everybody reports that their renewals and initial licensures are holding steady. We have seen a trend recently regarding CEs, particularly trauma release and emotional clearings being submitted as CEs. Many of these on closer inspection don't even involve touch and appear to be well outside the scope of practice for massage. It's my hope that we get the rules committee or the CE committee up and running as soon as possible so that we can review some of these CEs that are trending and get some decisions, definitive decisions made so that our staff can review these, or we can put information up on our website that explains whether or not the board accepts them. Part of the problem is many of these CEs advertise that they're approved by another umbrella of one sort or another, either national or local, et cetera. And that does not automatically mean that they qualify for the State Board of Oregon. And so there's some confusion there, and I think we can do a service to our licensees by coming up with some clarifications on that, as well as some of the semantic ones we've had in the past that were questionable.
Would that also be something that would be useful in the scope of practice to put in some guardrail limitations?
Yes, I think they're kind of connected. Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to compliance. The recent news article in the Willamette Week has had some desired effects. We have been inundated with people that want to help. We have gotten the attention of a Oregon legislative representative who also happens to be a member of the ABI community and in Portland, which is, you couldn't ask for more. As a result, in addition, AMTA Oregon contacted the board and wanted to have a sit-down meeting to talk about how they could support us as well, which Director Ruark and myself and Mitch all met with their group to include also FF7TB, who happened to be in Portland on another occasion. So they came in to offer their support as well. State Representative Tron wanted to attend, but at the last minute wasn't able to, but a state lobbyist, Robert, she did, Robert, that's it. She did meet with us as well and took copious notes. We sat down for several hours and discussed all the things that the board is already doing, where we've been successful and where we've had difficulties. I was going to lay it all out here in my report, but it was just easier to kind of attach my notes to this report. And I hope you had time to go through them and see if they generated any questions or comments. I'm very hopeful that we have an opportunity now to, now that we've got DOJ engaged, we have a state representative engaged and a state lobbyist engaged, that we might actually be able to make some really sweeping statewide type of changes rather than us tilting windows and playing whack-a-mole. So at the same time, being in government service for 30 years, I'm a little apprehensive because I've seen this go off the rails before and made worse at times. So I think it's very important that the board stay engaged and informed as this grows to make sure that the lobbyists and those that have interest in this are aligned with what the board needs and what is actually working in effect. So that's our goal. And Director Ruark and myself and Mitch are trying to keep the train on the tracks here and moving forward. So are there any questions regarding that meeting or how it went or next steps? It's exciting, actually. I didn't know if we were going to get this far, but the next couple of years could be really cool.
It's taken a while, but you got us this far. Like now we've got, a couple of people that are really interested, which is fantastic.
Yep, I'm excited about it. It might take like our local ordinance program and make it statewide. It might, I know that the Attorney General is now a lot more receptive to maybe being the author of our landlord letters, where before we just got shut down and denied on that. But now that this is getting some traction and some attention, it seems like everybody wants to come and play. So it's exciting.
That's very exciting. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
Good news. Anything else, Chuck?
I appreciate the Director Ruark and the board's faith in me continuing on after retirement. I will do everything I can to help you find a replacement and prepare them to take over without any, hopefully without any noticeable gaps in all the balls and plates we have juggled.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sure. So the recording was working when we actually started the meeting, so it is recorded, but it was muted for the audience. They didn't hear it, the introductions. Do you want to do introductions again, or are we good? It's actually recorded because we started the recording, so they can review that. But for the public, they didn't hear our introductions.
Sure, we can do that again. Quickly, then we will start with board members present, and then remotely we'll do staff.
And Carol and the people that are on the camera, we did hear them. It's just the people that are in here that they didn't hear.
Okay, great. Thank you for letting us know that. I'm Beckett Rowan, board chair and an LMT member. I am from Cresswell.
Maria Odell, vice chair, public member from Lebanon.
Raymond Riley, LMT number, license number 26355, he, him pronouns from Astoria.
Scott English, public board member, Dallas, Oregon.
Melissa Fulper, licensed massage therapist, Baker City, Oregon, 20950.
I'm Bob Ruark. I'm the executive director for the board.
Jeff Van Nunen, licensure and compliance manager for the board.
Mitch Breedlove, compliance specialist for the board.
Angie Hunt, board legal counsel.
Kaito Dasinata Haruna, policy analyst for the board.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew who was here.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, and we will go ahead and move on to our legislative update.
Excellent. Okay, it says it's a CAD, but we're going to kind of double up on this a little bit. So the legislative session, I got to pull it up here. 1 second, sorry about that. There we go. Okay, so there's really not much to say about the new session that starts in 2025, except that it's going to officially start January 21, 2025, and it runs through June 28th, 2025. Organizational days start on January 13th, that's the week before the session. During organizational days, that's when members-elect are sworn in as legislators, bills are introduced, and committee membership is announced. That's kind of when the CAD and I start to go to work. Because that's when the bills are introduced. And I've been to a few meetings, legislative meetings about some concepts, legislative concepts that have been thrown around. I'm not going to mention those because concepts aren't bills yet, and they might not ever make it to the session. There is one bill that passed in the 2024 legislature that impacts OBMT. I'm working with other boards and commissions as well as other health regulatory boards. There's been a lot of meetings about this. The bill is Senate Bill 1552. It's a very large bill. It actually talks about juvenile justice and it talks about all different kinds of stuff. But there's a section of that bill, section 44, that talks about, so we're calling it the predetermination bill. That's not what the title is. The title is pretty long and doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about because this information is put toward the end of the bill. But we call it the predetermination. So what it means, how it impacts this board, is that the bill says that somebody who has a criminal record can apply to the board to get pre-authorization before they go to school. Before they go to school for this professional licensing. So what it means is that they somehow are going to make an application or get some pre-authorization from our board that says where you're at right now, okay, before you go to school. That's not taking anything into consideration after you go to school and when you actually apply for your licensure. You're okay. We would basically license you right now if you had the proper education. There's a lot of caveats on this bill that say that if they lied to us, all bets are off. If something changes where they commit another crime, all bets are off. So they kind of go through any scenario that might actually happen between the time before they go to school and when they're graduating from school. So as you can see, there's a lot of information on this bill. There's a lot of little nooks and crannies of this bill that everybody's kind of worried about. So I've been having meetings with the different health professional licensing boards, the Oregon Health Authority, the governor's office, and SEBA boards, and all boards and commission meetings. And we're talking about how we're going to implement this bill because we want to all do it the same. We don't want to make it different for medical doctors. We don't want to make it different for nurses. We want to make it different for estheticians or whatever. But we want to make sure that it's a consistent way of doing it. So the first thing we did was we got an opinion from DOJ. And so we're actually waiting for that opinion. Once we get that opinion, then we've been working on a lot of language, and we're going to have a little committee get together and kind of build some language, and then we'll come back to the board to see if that language works for you guys. So I just want to give you a heads up that this bill is in the works. Our implementation is in the works, but there's some legal issues that need to be worked out and procedural issues that need to be worked out before we can implement this bill. So. And the DOJ opinion is coming from one of the other boards. We just all agreed to pay our share of that legal opinion. So we figured if we get 10 boards together, we split it 10 ways, it's going to be less impact on every board. So we'll get one legal opinion instead of getting 5, because it might be different. I mean,
is there a due process if they're if they're told that they don't qualify, do they have some recourse built into the bill?
Yeah, so that's the question, right?
Okay.
That's one of the big questions we have. Do they have an appeals process? So if the board says, no, we don't like this predetermination, do they have a right to hearing? You know, do they have to go through all that process to have a hearing? Because they're not even qualified to be licensed yet. They're just exploring it. So do we have to have a hearing? You know, if we do we have to change our language that says predetermination applicants have the right to have a hearing? So I mean, that's the opinion we're getting on that topic. Go ahead.
Are we going to charge for this background
Yes,
stuff going on?
it's written in the bill. There's
Okay.
it says we have the ability to charge what it would cost us to
Okay.
be able to do that
So
predetermination.
for the recourse, maybe that could be something as well. It could be set aside as a different rule than the others for if they request a hearing, that they would have to pay the legal fees as well, if we could work with that.
Absolutely, like we did with the other.
Right. Because if we nip that in the butt right now, we don't have to work
Yeah.
on the other end.
And the other thing we were trying to do is come up with a standard fee, you know, like it would be the same fee for every board. And so there's some discussion because some boards, like the medical board, you know, have some different things written in their language that preclude someone from being a physician that not necessarily would preclude a massage therapist from being a massage therapist. So I mean, that also is another reason for us to get a legal opinion on that. But yes, there will be a charge. And I think that when I write this up as a suggestion, or if we go to committee on it, I think the side of us continuing with legal fees is something that should be looked at also and discussed.
I just thought of something. Where I work, we have something where they kind of do that stuff before they student teach. But there are a lot of them that they don't do it.
Correct.
And they still do it.
Yeah.
So that may be a consideration, or do they just, or do we just, when they come to us, well, you didn't do a pre-approval, I mean, is that something else we're thinking about too?
So the law says they have to petition the board. I don't know what that means. We don't know if that's another language issue, right? It says they have to petition the board for pre-approval or predetermination, basically. I know what you're getting at, but let me kind of go back a little bit.
Okay.
So we're talking about what does that look like? Is it an application? Is it a one-page form? What kind of background check we're going to do and that kind of stuff? But yeah, if they don't petition the board for that predetermination, then I think it's status quo. Whatever we would go with at the time of their licensure. They're not required to, there's not a requirement for them to petition the board.
Got it. Okay, that's what I was asking.
It says they can't.
Okay.
That's understandable. I would say we get one every 2 or 3 months that has a questionable background that they are asking if they can get a hint as to whether or not they're going to qualify. And currently, we don't offer that. So I don't see a huge influx of our applicants doing that petition, but and I think some that have minor backgrounds will do it just to be safe, and I understand that. And this is certainly something that's been brewing for several years.
It has.
In discussion, so I think it's coming. I hope, it sounds like we've got a great group working on it, and it should be a good piece of legislation.
Yeah, I think it is. You know, another hurdle we have is, you know, some boards and commissions require their board to approve an application such as that. I think some of them are going to have the board give them direction, you know, basically a matrix that says that you know, the board staff can approve this. I mean, how's that going to work, right? Every one of these need to go to the board for the board approved, because that's what kind of the language says. So that's other things to work out. There's a lot of stuff to work out with this. So that's why the implementation date is, I think, July of 2025.
I wanted to clarify one thing about the fee structure. Would that be something that would be written into it across the board, or would that be something that each board would be able to determine their own cost?
Yeah, I think each board would determine their own cost of that. But we're trying to be consistent. So there was a lot of questions when we had a meeting, the last meeting I was attending. They basically threw out, what do you plan on charging? And it was pretty much everybody was consistent, except some of them were like this much, and some of them were like nothing, you know, and it was like, oh my gosh, okay, well, there's the outliers that might cause some issues, so we have to get on the same page with that. But there's no requirement that everybody be consistent. And I think if your expenses for doing a predetermination are much more than mine, then I think you should have the ability to be able to say, well, you know, it cost us $100 to do a background check, or where the massage board would cost $50. You know, we should be able to ability to adjust it such as that.
Thank you.
I do know that the Nevada board does something similar, and you can call them and have them do a preliminary background check. And so you may want to reach out to them and just ask how they do it.
Excellent.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else under our legislative update?
No, that's all.
Thank you. Okay, the FSMTV annual board meeting update.
So I was lucky enough to go to the FSMTV, and I've gone to annual conferences now pretty much every year since about 91, and I was very impressed with it. I took lots of notes, so forgive me, it's going to take me about 10 minutes to review everything. I'm basically going to go through the outline, the agenda that happened, and I'm going to start by letting everybody know that the FSMTV consists of 46 states plus Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico was present there. The opening keynote speaker was Corey, and I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his last name, but he wrote a book called Inspire Integrity, Chasing an Authentic Life. And I do have that book, if anybody would like to borrow it and read it. But he summarized life and said life should be, the three most important things should be peace with yourself, have at least 5 close friends, and have a strong character. It was a very good presentation. Then we reviewed the candidates for the election, which also happened to include our own Executive Director, Ruark, for members of the Board of Directors for FSMTV. We talked about proposed bylaw amendments and state updates. So these are a few of the updates that states shared with everyone on some major changes with them. For example, Nebraska House Bill 78, massage therapists are now considered healthcare workers. California had a House bill that having a seat used to be unlimited time, and now it is limited to 2 4-year terms. Georgia had a House bill where massage parlors were only complaint-driven for investigations, and now it can be anytime. Texas had House Bill 3579, where police can immediately close illegal massage businesses, IMBs, and landlords can't re-rent to massage parlors for 2 years. Idaho was proud to say they have more public showing to their meetings. Florida House Bill 179 stated that IMB crackdown. So now it requires a dress code for all employees of all massage parlors and no signs when someone walks throughout the facility of sleeping on or any bed, or show a sign of anybody taking a nap or spending the night. Louisiana has a 9% massage sales tax, which has hurt them a great deal, and they are losing classroom enrollment and businesses. Missouri went from 500 to 625 hours to complete schooling. West Virginia's Senate Bill 76, after a citation is given for an illegal massage business, IMB, a note must go on the front door of the facility indicating it's an illegal massage business, and if that note is removed, it is a $1,000 per day fine. That was awesome to hear. Our next topic was, we did the board meeting do's and don'ts, and it was open forum. And it happened to have several attorneys, including our Lori Lindley. A lot of the discussion was making moral or the correct decisions. We covered the definition of recusal, an abstain vote, what exactly is an executive session, how to be consistent on decisions, sticking to the agenda, having a transparent practice, encourage the public to attend, and no side talk during sessions. At the end of the first day, we did a DC nighttime monuments tour for those that wanted to attend. And the next morning we had trivia on the DC monuments tour as the votes were tallied for the FSMTB. And in case you're curious, the first bill was printed in 1862. I wasn't aware of that. The results, serving 3-year term, we had Caroline Fox Guerrerin, Washington's Shamir Carrera, and our very own Executive Director, Robert Ruark. For position 4, it's Paul Andrews, and position 5, Nicole Davis. And then we talked about tools on how to combat human trafficking. For example, 2-year research, background check, good relationships with the police, consistent following of policy, exercising all options, which is revocation, suspension, citation, fees, letter, concern. California does a free monthly 2-hour Zoom on how to create a good business application for all new salons to use for businesses, including a copy of the business license, arrest history, copy of the driver's license of all employees, and their ID number. Our own Jeff Van Lannen talked about helping landlords take action on IMBs. For example, IMBs getting letters, leases should have in the writing, no living on premises, no illegal activity, a nuisance law. We talked about the difference of labor trafficking versus sex trafficking, and how labor trafficking is virtually impossible to prove, unfortunately. And then winding it up, we talked about the legal trends and top cases going on throughout the nation, which consisted of several attorneys, including Lori Lindley. And one that blew everyone away was out of New Jersey. It was the Bajakan case. He was a 1983 chiropractor grad who got arrested in 2005 for child porn, had weapons, which happened to be an Uzi, and attempting to lure a child in a sexual act. It went on and on and on, but there was court updates and changes in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2017. I could go on and on and on. But luckily, he finally had his license pulled. It took from 2005 to 2023 for him to finally get his license pulled with no appeal possible. Wow. And then we summarized, when considering violations, it's not forgiveness, it's objective factors, such as the nature of the violation, the history, remorse, looking at the law, was it a clear, plain violation, the length since the violation, and us being consistent. So it was a wonderful experience.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Appreciate the update.
Thank you. And I just want to summarize a couple things. Thank you. That was really hit all the good highlights. As far as what our board have wanted to move forward, we our agenda, as we had voted in our meeting, we had it up with everyone on the board we discussed, and the proposals went as we had hoped. I also had a point of feedback that I think is something the board should keep in mind going forward. As the delegate, we talked about how my trip was reimbursed. But I just want to point out that it was at a lovely hotel in a very expensive town. And as massage therapists, we often are people who do not make a whole lot of money. In fact, a lot of massage therapists in our state live with assistance programs and do not have a whole lot of money in the bank account. So when I went to the hotel to check in and had to put a $425 hold on my credit card to secure my room, and then needed to get room service for dinner, and the cheapest meal I could get after 10 p.m. was $70. I luckily was able to cover that because I'm in a place where I am able to right now. My concern was that in the future, when we send a delegate who's a massage therapist, which we want to do, we want to encourage LMTs to participate in government and the board, I want them to go with knowing what those numbers are going to be and perhaps a board card, that because I would have been devastated if we sent a representative who literally couldn't check into the hotel. That was just a significant point, because there are times in my life I would have had a problem with that. And luckily we had a lot of Oregon representation. That may not always be the case. So those are just some perspective things I think we really need to make sure massage therapists know. Additionally, the cost of living in different places is very different. What a massage therapist makes in Vegas or on the East Coast is very different from what a rural LMT makes in Oregon. And they just need to be aware of the finances around, like getting food around there, what things might be. And I just want to make sure that we're really taking care of people and nobody has a bad experience with something like that. That's a good point, but a lot of people do this job and work really hard, but we know a lot of massage therapists do struggle financially, and I just don't want that to be a barrier or any kind of classist embarrassment for anyone in the future.
And we have done that in the past. We do have a board credit card that we have put down. We use the card to reserve those rooms. Unfortunately, at this time, FSMTV did it all because they
Paid for us.
they paid for everybody. But yeah, in the future, we'll make sure that's a very good point. Thank you for that. Because I was a little shocked too that it was a $400 hold. Usually it's $100 or something when you check into the hotel. So.
Yeah, I immediately got a call from home, like, what did you do? Yeah, because within, a few hours, it was $500 held, and that could be very meaningful.
Absolutely.
Be significant.
Yeah.
That way there's no more surprises in the future for when this happens.
Yeah, I would just hate for that to be a bad experience of what otherwise was really a wonderful experience and a fantastically done conference.
Well, it happened last year at our travel meeting as well.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, here we have a $25 that we have to put on a card for $25 here, but yeah, asking for almost $400 to $500 is extravagant for a lot of such therapists. So, any questions about that?
For all of us.
Yeah.
But some of you have a government credit card, I know. It can do a little damage control. Any questions about that meeting for Scott or myself? Okay, thank you. Board member new business. Would anyone like to bring new business forward? Bob, would this be a good place to discuss what we talked about doing a board member statement about CEs? Is that something?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to?
Sure.
Okay.
In our prep meeting with the staff, I had suggested that we, as a board, come out with a statement about the position we take on continuing education to help the staff answer questions when they come in about why do we have CE requirements that we do, can we get rid of them? I know we're going to have some public comment coming up very quickly, but I feel like this is something that has come up at least annually, and I can think of at least for the last 6 or 7 years, this has rolled into our meetings. And I think it would be very helpful if we have something for the staff to send out as a board position statement to explain that, and to, something, the kind of thing that could be shared between massage therapists also, helping explain the rules. So that's something Director Ruhr was going to work on, and that we were going to bring to the board in the future.
That would be fantastic. I would just like to add that things trend in the CEs, and there's new ideas, and that's fantastic, but it does sometimes catch staff off guard because we have no idea what this new course is. So then we have to take the time, along with the LMT that took the course, to get an outline and a syllabus and start to dig in about which parts of this, if not all of it, are within the scope, and what category do they fall in, and so any kind of umbrella guidance would be helpful. But I don't think it's going to eliminate the occasional, this is new and trendy, and do we accept it or not? Decisions might have to still come to the board or to a committee in the future, but I don't see that stopping.
Yeah, so the board did this 10 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. We had our traveling meeting was in Portland at East West College. And the board went through all the CEs, and they reaffirmed what would be acceptable for CEs, and they created what they call a rubric, which was a document that was given to our board staff that said, this is what we'll accept, and this is what we're looking at for CEs. But that's been 10 years ago now, and things have changed. So I think it is probably past time to create a document like that of some sort. So I'll make sure that I try to capture what you guys want, and then when it comes back to you, then I'm sure there'll be a lot of comments. So,
my hope for this is that it can clear up some of the questions that come frequently, like why can't we get rid of CEs? Because it's a statutory mandate to be a healthcare provider. Like, there are certain things that are just black and white laws, and then there are certain things we can discuss. Like, what CEs are we taking, and the staff need to make decisions, versus things that are written into law and we don't have discretion over. So yeah, just something that we know massage therapists share a lot of information through social media and through trainings and college networks, something that we could just help the staff and help clarify things in the way people are communicating in a modern sense.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it would also help us as these new CE providers and old providers with new ideas come forward, and the board changes over time as well. So that would be most helpful.
So I'll list that as a work item, and we'll talk about that later.
Wonderful. Any other new business to come bring forward? Okay. Thank you. 1 second. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to public correspondence. At this point, we have 3 correspondences which were attached to the meeting minutes. Are there any comments from board or staff on the correspondence? I think we will talk a little bit more about CEs, I'm guessing, during public comments. I have one question about the correspondence regarding CPR versus basic life support.
Yeah, I have a comment.
We did discuss that has been discussed in several meetings, and I thought we had moved that forward. Am I remembering that correctly? To go back to
the discussion, I don't remember moving it forward or not.
Yeah, and so it's a work item, and this is timely because I have to say that this individual provides some great points with regards to healthcare, providers, CPR. I mean, the things that are required are just something that LMPs are probably not going to use.
Or could definitely not do legally.
And could definitely not do legally, exactly. So I happen to agree, so I'm gonna do some research. This is one of the work item reviews. It was a language item review that we're going to move forward with some of the language issues that we're moving forward. So I'm going to do a little more research on this, and then when we move that language forward, we will include this in our discussion, or your discussion regarding whether we want to go back to CPR versus continuing the way that it is.
What I do remember was that we had a pretty robust discussion on it when Krista was still on the board.
Correct.
And that I believe the board was very much aligned with some of the points brought up in this, and that we're interested in seeing that revisited and shifted for some of those same reasons. So
if you could help my memory, is this a rule change or a legislative?
It's a rule change.
Okay, excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, it's a fairly easy rule change, and just to give you a little bit of a history, when LMTs became recognized as healthcare professionals, the idea was to increase their responsibilities and more in line with healthcare professionals. And then it was also because there was a misconception, I think, that just getting a CPR card was not a certification, although it says certified in CPR on it. So trying to elevate the profession, I think, was the intent that the board had with regards to this. Looking at it now, I don't necessarily know that accomplished that goal. And is it good for a massage therapist to know other things outside of CPR and AED? Well, yeah, absolutely. But is it required? And you're requiring it now, and I think that's the question that needs to be posed in this discussion.
That's a good point, Director. A change wouldn't necessarily preclude an LMT from taking a more advanced course.
And I do think they made a great point, though, that there are things like the first aid courses are fantastic. There are all sorts of classes that Red Cross and American Heart Association offer, but the BLS are so much focused on crash cart, things that happen in hospitals that we cannot do, and it is a mismatch for our profession. Mm-hmm. No massage therapists work in an ER where there's a crash cart. We would be thrown out so quickly. But there are fantastic first aid courses, and I think often those could be very relevant for CEs and whatnot. But the BLS is quite
certainly more applicable to something occurring in a clinical setting for a massage.
Clinical setting,
first aid,
and ambulance, but it's well without our fetal monitors and intubation and things like that. We could never do in any circumstance. So
it
would be a real bad day.
with the board's. Is it board suggesting that I go back and rewrite some language more in line with what we've discussed here, what you've discussed here, and bring that back to the board? That doesn't necessarily include the BLS requirement.
Yeah.
So they need to vote on that?
I'm pretty sure we've already sent that direction.
I'm in favor of that.
I think that was already directed several meetings ago.
Okay.
Okay, then we have the correspondence. I said we'll talk about the CEs when we go into public comment and the CE appeal. Any staff or board have questions or comments?
I have a comment. I don't think that 1 hour a month per renewal of continuing education is too much. I understand the cost prohibitiveness for some LMTs. However, in this letter, they also speak about having to have liability insurance that's often purchased through AMTA or ABMP. And with both of those policies, you get free continuing education units.
I just want to mention that, of the unsupervised CEs, there's 17 of them. There's only 8 supervised required. 17 of them you could do a self-study. watching instructional videos, reading books and articles, or writing up a book report on it at no cost whatsoever. So the only ones you really have to pay for are your supervised. And that is 8 over the course of 2 years.
And if you attend board meetings, that's 12 of your 25.
No, it's 3.
No, it's
There's a
limited.
limit.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You're limited.
Just
But even still, that's 3 of the 25.
And it can be kept, the cost can be kept down if people are, they're thrifty and that they know about it. A lot of times I've talked to people who have been massage therapists for 20 some odd years and had no idea.
Okay.
And I don't know.
I just want to put a pin in this conversation.
Yeah, okay.
So we have public correspondence, we can answer some more directly. If anything comes up in that, I think let's continue some of those clarifications as we go forward. Okay, I think that we can go ahead and move into public comments this time. Public comment is limited to matters on the public meeting agenda or otherwise relevant to matters that may come before this agency. Comments will not be allowed that are longer than the allotted time by the chair or disruptive to the agency's conduct of its business. Any member of the public who would like to address the board, please turn your camera on. When called upon by the chair, please turn your microphone on and state your name and license number if you're a licensee for the record. Please keep comments to 3 minutes or less. I'd like to go ahead and ask Akaite, do we have anybody else who's come in since our beginning? Okay.
Yes. We have
Can you read me who's online?
Maya and Andy Steele. Maya needs to include her last name or him or her last name.
Okay, great. Amaya, if you can hear me, you could please put your last name on your introduction so we can credit you for your attendance. Okay, then let's go ahead and start with Jennifer. Would you like to address the board?
Yes, she's raising her hand.
Yes,
Okay.
sorry. Can you hear me okay?
I can, and I'm sorry if I didn't say let's please keep comments to 3 minutes and under.
Okay, so obviously you guys read what we had to say. There was quite a few of us in a short amount of time that felt the same way, and we totally understand where you guys come from. And keeping things black and white, like you said, but I'm sorry, I don't remember one of your names that you went to that conference, but kind of you guys were joking about it, and in a lot of places in Oregon, we don't make a lot of money, and we are here to protect the public. We sign an oath or say an oath when we get our license. And I guess basically, long story short, what we are wanting you guys to consider is after we get that and we have our niche to make a lot of the continuing ed our choice. I know a lot of them are free, but at that point, I know a lot of massage therapists are saying, they don't necessarily, they're not interested in it, and they're just kind of doing it just to get by, just to keep our license. And at that point, what is the reasoning for it? We're not doing it for education, we're doing it to keep our license, basically. And there are a lot of other states surrounding that don't have as many as we do, and we're all doing the same thing all across the states. We should be able to do what we love, and if that means that we're going to stop doing massage because it's unattainable, then it's going to be a dying profession, and really unfortunate, because I know we all love what we do, and there are other professions like estheticians, acupuncturists, chiropractors, RNs that don't have as many continuing ed that we have. And I guess, long story short, all we're asking is if maybe you guys can consider taking the 25 credits down, and see what that would look like so that we can keep practicing and improve the course.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate both the comments and the information provided in that. And I want to just hold any of our questions or comments till we see if there's any more members of the public who'd like to speak to this particularly.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak specifically about the CE requirements? Okay, hearing none, I want to give just a little bit of clarification from the board, and I want to say, I apologize if in any way our tone sounded like we were making light of the income challenges faced by many massage therapists. It's certainly not what I intended, and I know many of us struggle to earn a reasonable living and work very hard for what we do. So I hope that didn't come across in a joking manner. I apologize if it did. As far as the CEs, I want to say, I know 6 years ago, this came up in a rather robust question, and there were a lot of well-attended board meetings discussing this. A couple things that came out of the discussion last time this was raised were that we do have a statutory requirement for continuing education. That isn't something the board has any discretion over. That would be something that would have to be changed in the legislature. Secondly, the ethics and the cultural competency requirements are also things that are written in law, not in rule under the discretion of the board. So those are very important things to keep in mind when we look at these. When it comes to the choice to stay with 25, the groundswell several years ago was very much against reducing that from a point of professionalism. So it is something that the board has had at least annual questions about this, but we did have many, many public comments several years ago who were very much in favor of not reducing it below 25 as healthcare providers. And that is all, those are things specifically I have seen on the board. Director Ruark, did you have anything you'd like to add to just those explanations? Maybe?
Yeah, so 6 years ago, 7 years ago, one of our board members came up with the idea to reduce CEs to the statutory requirement of 12 hours. And there was a robust rebellion against that from not only from the trade organizations, the LMTs themselves. There's been this push over the course of many years to move licensed massage therapists from, where they were many years ago to making them healthcare professionals. And part of those steps required first getting recognized as healthcare professionals by the state, which we've accomplished here. And then making sure that the standards meet that same standard required of other healthcare professional regulatory boards. And I think that was the argument most of the time from the people that didn't like the idea of reducing the hours to the statutory minimum. Now, I will say that the board had some authority during COVID to reduce it to the statutory minimum to help LMTs, make it through the pandemic, be able to continue on with their profession. And we removed late fees. We went to the statutory minimum required CEs, and it worked really well. I think our licensees appreciated it, but that was an emergency declaration from the governor, so it went down to that statutory requirement. We were required to make it better for our LMTs at that point. Not that we wouldn't want to do that for all the time, but so that's kind of the history. I mean, it's been tried a couple of times to reduce it to the statutory minimum of 12 hours, and we tend to get a lot of pushback from that with valid points. as to why it shouldn't happen.
Valid points on both sides. I can see both sides of the argument. Curious, Director, with your background and tenure here, as the legislature or other factors have added mandatory CE requirements over time, has the board reduced the overall number? Like if the governor says you have to have an hour of cultural competency, did we go back and remove an hour of general CEs to keep it balanced, or has it just grown over time naturally to get bigger and bigger?
Like the cultural competency requirement of one, every other renewal, I believe it is, was not added. In addition, I think it was, it became part of the 25. So we reduced whatever we had requirements before that. So it didn't grow.
So we didn't have like 20 and then they added some things that went to 23 and then added some things.
No, we just adjusted it. And the legislators will oftentimes come up with laws that they think is good for the profession. There's a lot of debate. There's a lot of thought that goes into these bills, and when they get approved, like the cultural competency one, our board was specifically named because LMTs are considered healthcare professionals. And so we had to add that, and the board decided back then to not add it, an additional CE to keep the Cs where they're at, and just take one of the other hours off to add that cultural competency section.
I think it was similar with the pain module.
Correct.
It was also required, so.
Absolutely.
I hope it helps understand. Some of these things they would have to be changed by the legislature for us to make adjustments to them.
I appreciate that. I was just trying to see if the board continued to keep it at 25, or if that had just grown over time and has gotten out of control. So that makes sense. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so it's 12 and a half hours a year, basically an hour a month, like Board Member Riley said.
I do have a question. Is now a good time for that?
Is it about this specific?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, as far as the ethics, is it statutory, the law, that the ethics needs to be supervised? Or is that something that is a rule?
The board, no, it's a rule.
Okay.
The board determined that because ethics are important, that you shouldn't have to take a non-supervised online class that you just answer 5 questions and bam, and there's your 1 hour. They thought ethics were important enough to make it something that you should have to sit down or at least do the interactive distance learning. There was a lot of discussion about that. At the time, it's a different board now, but at that time, the board felt it was very important that it was a topic that needed to be, that was important to the profession, and it needed to be a contact hour. Back then it was called contact.
And I would also like to clarify that the ethics, it doesn't have to be exclusively ethics. It's written ethics, communication, and policy. Boundaries. So, yeah, it doesn't have to be super narrow limitation to just ethics. It does open up what people can take.
And if I remember correctly, part of the impetus for that was in hopes that we'd reduce some of our compliance cases by requiring that as a refresher all the time.
Yeah, because the boundaries part was meant to be kind of a draping thing, because we had issues with some massage therapists that, a small percentage, just so you know, that had some draping issues. So the board was trying to cover, ethics, boundaries, and communication, which are the 3 things I think that gets actual LMTs in the most trouble. Violations of those 3 things. So I think it was trying to just be a nice reminder.
What happened to the public comment period?
We're still in the public comment period. We're trying to clarify some of that. We will go to the next caller as soon as we wrap up these about the CE conversation.
Well, that's what we want to talk about.
Oh, my apologies. I had asked if there was any more public comment about the CE topic. Are you just joining us or have you been on?
No, I've been on, and Patty was on too, and she just got left for some reason. I'm not sure why, but she had her hand up first.
Okay, I'm sorry. What's your name? I can't read it from
Julie Onofrio.
Okay, great. Julie, why don't you go ahead then?
So I wanted to, I came across the petition that Jennifer had started. Um, Let me get your um, your continuing education requirements as in your rule specifically says the intent of continuing education is to protect the public by maintaining continued competency in the knowledge, skills, and abilities. But what are the competencies? We don't have any. Like we have the ELAP for the education um, part of it, but we do not have any for continuing education. The whole continuing education process is a joke, in my opinion, because they do not test any classes. They do not ensure that you have any competencies. There is, there's there's just so much background noise with somebody's thing. It's hard to talk, but I would like to move towards being actual continued competence rather than continuing education. There's a big difference, and we need to have a study done as to what continuing competence is. And since we don't have that information, you have all these arbitrary CEs without any testing, without any quality control. And I, for one, was severely injured in a CE class, and I wish I had sued the instructor, but so
Thank you, Julie. So,
I also have a study. I was part of a study in the beginning of the pandemic that we looked at over 80 continuing education studies and found that none of them supported continuing education, but they did support continuing competence. And that study was never completed, and I'm actually just been talking to some people about it. I have all the studies in one place, and I have a summary of what I have found, and I am going to take it to the Massage Therapy Foundation to see if they can continue on with it.
thank you, Julie. Do we have any board comments or questions, Julie?
This is Jennifer.
Hold on one second. Hold on one second, Jennifer.
Okay,
Julie,
sorry.
we will take that under advisement. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any more or any members of the public who have not yet spoken? Okay. If that is all, Jennifer, have you already spoke, I believe, right?
Yeah, I was the original one who sent in the petition and spoke, but I kind of wanted to say one more last little bit if nobody else had any comments about it.
That's fine.
So basically, I guess all we're asking moving forward is kind of like what they did down to the pandemic is keeping the required. We understand that the board has really nothing to do with that, and we understand, but taking it down to the 12 credits so that we actually are taking the classes that we want to learn about, and it's doable, and basically how we go about doing that moving forward to get it down to the 12, and make it attainable for everybody in Oregon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public who would like to speak?
I just wanted to ask, like, I have all these documents and articles written about CE. I just put it in the chat, but should I email them to you or something?
Please email them to Director Ruark.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my email address should be on our website. If not, you can just call the office and they'll give that information to you, Julie. You can mail them to me directly. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol, did you have something?
I do. I when I read the materials, the letters and the emails that people sent, there was another issue that we haven't brought up, and that was some people who have X number of years as licensees feel that there should be potentially a tiered system where people that have been practicing for a very long time should, well, we know we can't drop below the statutory minimum, but should have a lesser requirement for continuing ed than people who are newer in practice. And I just wanted to mention that I read that and find out if there's any discussion around that particular aspect of it.
That's where I was trying to go, but.
American status, basically.
Yeah, I think that's something that the board has discussed several times within the last 2 or 3 years, but it's something we could also take up as new business again if we get to that point.
Yeah, I could do, gather Julie's information that she has put together with this other correspondence we have here, and do my own research with regards to what the standard is nationally, and bring something back to the board so you can have an agenda topic and discuss it specifically with the focus of coming to a determination. If you'd like me to do that, I can certainly do that.
I think that would be very helpful. I could just roll into that as a work item with the board's statement. Okay. Kaite, do we have anybody else on the line that we
have Amaya and we have Angus here.
Amaya, would you like to speak to the board? Amaya, were you trying to jump in here?
No, I was just listening. Thank you.
Okay. Andy, did you want to address the board?
Not on that topic. Are we ready to move on to a different topic?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So I'm Andy Stone. I'm an LMT here in Seaside, Oregon. Here in Seaside, we have 2 establishments that are open with no licensed massage therapists. I've submitted complaints since June and July. I know there's been an investigation back in that time frame, and we still have not seen any actions or any board comments about those 2 establishments. And they're still practicing without a license. One is human trafficking, sex trafficking, and the other is just human trafficking. But it's both are here and causing trouble to the massage industry. I think what the board is here to do is to protect us from those things and to help us to establish and maintain a level of professionalism in the industry. And a 5 or 6 month turnaround time is unacceptable, in my opinion. I'd like to see and see some movement toward a faster turnaround on violations of, especially these serious violations that endanger public health and cause the massage profession to be looked on as a profession. So please let me know how I can help do that. But I've been making as much noise as I can, and I still can't get any action.
Great. Thank you very much.
I can comment.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if you'd like to speak to that.
We certainly understand your concerns and appreciate them. I will point out that we address all our complaints in as timely a manner as we possibly can with the staffing that we have available, and we do prioritize them based on public safety. We do place a higher ranking of public safety on those cases and complaints involving LMTs that may have allegedly participated in some conduct that would be possibly criminal, etc. Those are always our first and foremost priorities. Then we have to assign these cases out to our investigators, who then have to put them into their queues and prioritize them, travel, conduct the investigation, write the report, submit the report. The report gets reviewed, approved, and then it has to wait and be brought to the board for action. The board then takes action, and then we have to begin our due process. And due process, depending on which forks in the road that the respondents take, takes at least 21 days and can be as much as years. So, and I'd like to reiterate and correct any misunderstandings that may be out there. The board does not have the authority to shut these businesses down. I wish we did. I am working diligently to find a way that we could do that in the future, with some legislative help, hopefully. So right now, we fine them as appropriate, and as the board makes those determinations, in hopes that we can affect their pocketbooks and encourage them to close down and move on. We share our investigations with local law enforcement in hopes that law enforcement will also take action and prosecute these offenders where the board cannot. And we also engage with city officials in hopes that they will enforce their own ordinances as well, and with our landlords that may be involved in hopes that they will take the right steps and evict these tenants when appropriate. Honestly, there's not much more we can do at this time. In fact, we're one of the leading states in the nation on how we're working these cases, and I understand it's frustrating. It isn't any more frustrating for anyone as it is for us. And I can tell you that without speaking regarding the confidentiality of those cases particularly mentioned, that we are actively working cases in that area and have been and continue to.
Thank you, Jeff. I want to say sometimes when we file a report, it's very frustrating to not be able to see all the things happening behind the scenes, but there are so many legal steps and processes that have to be followed and take time. And like was just stated, there's no authority of the board to physically shut the places down. So while it may look like nothing's happened to a place directly, it doesn't mean that the board hasn't developed a copious investigation into it. They're not working with law enforcement. Like, those things are happening, unfortunately, sometimes just not publicly, and certainly not having the impact of closing places down immediately. But we're working within the parameters we have legally to do. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, and I think everyone here very much agrees with that, and is working toward that end.
Can I ask what the average turnaround time is for a serious, like a law affecting a complaint like mine?
Let me answer that for a second. So it really depends on the case. So everybody who gets a civil penalty from this board has the due process rights. So until the due process procedures run out, that can be, so they can go to an administrative hearing, which might take 3 or 4 months. They can go to a court of appeals, which might take another 6 to 8 months. If they have the money, they can continue fighting it and fighting it and fighting it. And unfortunately, they have a lot more money than we do, because they're, engaging in that type of behavior. We still fight them. We still go after them. We still engage in these appeals, and fight them diligently. But it could be 15 days, and they pay their fine and they're done with us, or they go to collections, and it can be a year and a half, 2 years before we're able to have any kind of action against a facility or an individual. So it really depends on the scenario.
And I'll add to that, Director Rourke, that even if we were to get one done perfectly and it gets done in 6 to 8 weeks, which is possible if the timing's just right, they will either pay their fine or not pay their fine and go to collections and remain open.
Yeah, because there's nothing we can do to stop that. We can't shut them down, as much as we would love to.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to engage law enforcement, because our violations of our statute are misdemeanors. So we've been engaging law enforcement to try to educate them about, what they can help us do. They have also been working with the landlords, like Jeff said, also been working with some federal agencies to see if they could help us out. So we've been diligently working to try to get these partnerships. We had just met with AMTA and FSMTV, and FSMTV talked about helping us put together a law enforcement education symposium, I suppose it would be called, where we invite law enforcement agencies from throughout the state and kind of tell them, this is our problem, what can we do to help you, help us get rid of these places. Our authority is limited. We don't have any arrest authority or the authority to shut down a business. So we're doing everything we can within our ability, but we're trying to be the conduit to bring all these people together so they can communicate with each other, including us, so we can all communicate and be on the same page. It's a work in progress because this is a nationwide problem. It's not just Oregon, and it's nationwide, and all of us have been working hard to try to find a solution.
I have two comments.
But is there a way for me or any other members of the LMT community to support local, or to be able to hold accountable our local law enforcement and city governments that are not enforcing these rules, even after the fact?
Go to your city council meetings and complain.
Yes.
I've been there. I've been complaining. That's what I said at the beginning. I'm yelling as loud as I can, but I can't get movement because they say that they haven't heard anything from the board.
That's not true.
One, we do refer to law enforcement as standard practice, and secondly, you can file a police report. So I think we're all very sympathetic to your frustration in dealing with those situations. We are doing our best, and the more they hear from the community, hopefully the more they will take it seriously. So please, we're here to help do what we can, but please keep pestering them on your end. Yeah, we vote for people and we hold them accountable.
I'd like to make
two comments.
One, if an owner of an IMB has decided that these fines are part of the cost of doing business, there's not really much that we can do about that. And two, I used to drive past some of these facilities in Seaside, Oregon. I know from personal experience, you can drive from one side of Seaside to the other in about 10 minutes. And that's just one small town in the entire large state of Oregon. You mentioned the number 2 illicit massage businesses in Seaside. Just think of how many there are statewide and how many cases we hear on a regular basis. Please refer them to law enforcement as often as you can. As an LMT working out of that area, I feel the financial hardship of having these businesses there. Unfortunately, I've seen what the board is able to do, and we don't have the authority to shut these businesses down. So yeah, keep making noise, Andy. Thank you.
Good point, Ryan. Thank you. Any other members of the public who have a comment? Okay, seeing no other members of the public wishing to speak, we're going to go ahead and transition into executive session. Go ahead and read the script. The Oregon Board of Massage Therapists will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192660 to discuss certain matters on the agenda pursuant to ORS 192660-2F, to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection, ORS 1925014. To review, discuss, and consider written legal advice provided by the Department of Justice pursuant to ORS 1926602F, or to consult with counsel concerning legal rights and duties regarding current litigation or litigation likely to be filed pursuant to ORS 1926602H. To consider and discuss in executive session information obtained as part of an investigation of a licensee, applicant, or other person alleged to be participating in violation of law pursuant to ORS 192-660-2KL and ORS 676-175. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, the board will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room. ORS 687-0815, prior to imposing a sanction under ORS 687-081 or any rule of the board shall consider, but is not limited to considering the following factors: the person's past history in observing the provisions of ORS 687-011 to 687-250, 687-895, and 687-991, and the rules of the board. The effect of the violation on public safety and welfare, the degree to which the action subject to sanction violates professional ethics and standards of practice, the economic and financial condition of the person subject to sanction, and any mitigating factors that the board may choose to consider. I estimate that we will return to public session in approximately 90 minutes, so about 12:05 p.m. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All of the members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Okay. We can go ahead and stop recording.